dream destinations, exceptional cruises, polar adventures. Welcome to Beyond the Horizon, the podcast that takes you where the journey truly begins. A production of Area Voyages.
Usually, when you look at a city map, there's this expectation of like a logical progression.
Right, yeah.
Sort of like looking at the rings of a tree. You have the ancient heart right in the center, and then these concentric circles of newer developments that just slowly radiate outward.
Which makes perfect sense.
Right, it makes sense. It's highly legible.
Right.
But then you step into the heart of Scotland's capital, and suddenly that map is completely useless.
Oh, totally useless.
You're looking at a place where it honestly feels like two completely different puzzle boxes were just smashed together on the exact same table.
Yeah.
And it is visually jarring, but in the best possible way. So today we are doing a deep dive into this newly released guide. It came out today, May 3rd, 2026.
Fresh off the presses.
Exactly. It's called Le Guide Ultime d'Edinburgh by Yvonne Junior Blanchet. And we're using this to figure out how a 340 million year old volcano, an alcoholic elephant, and a graveyard full of wizards built one of Europe's most magnetic cities.
It's just the absolute definition of an architectural collision. And, you know, this deep dive isn't just about reading off some standard tourist itinerary for you.
No, not at all.
To really grasp Edinburgh, you have to look way beneath the surface. Our mission today is to unpack the actual mechanics of the city. We want to understand how its extreme geography and its incredibly turbulent history just sort of conspire to create this extraordinary place.
Yeah, we're talking about a city where medieval alleyways, completely dormant volcanoes, and like ultra-modern gastronomy are not just existing side by side.
Right, they're constantly interacting.
Yeah. So whether you are prepping for an upcoming trip or maybe hunting for some serious literary inspiration, or you just love a place that has incredibly deep, unapologetically eccentric roots, this is your insider's blueprint.
Absolutely.
We're going to dig into the why and the how behind the city's facade. And looking at Blanchet's text, I think the best place to start understanding that why is that massive visual collision we just mentioned.
Right, the split personality of the city.
Yeah. Exactly. Edinburgh is fundamentally defined by two distinct areas, and both of them are recognized together as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is pretty rare.
Yeah, it's super unique.
You have the Old Town and the New Town, and they're separated by this single sunken garden called the Prince's Street Gardens. To me, looking at how the New Town sits literally right next to the Old Town. Okay, let's unpack this. It feels like looking at a massive physical software update.
That is actually a really highly accurate way to frame it. But to understand why a society would require such a massive update, you first have to understand the claustrophobia of the original operating system.
Right.
The Old Town is the medieval heart of the city. It's anchored by the Royal Mile, which is this historic stretch running all the way down from Edinburgh Castle at the very top to the Palace of Holyroodhouse at the bottom.
And branching off this main spine are these incredibly narrow, steep alleyways, right? I mean, the text calls them closes, places like Gladstone's Land or Mary King's Close.
Yes, and some of those closes literally exist underground now.
Wait, really? Underground?
Yeah, because the Old Town was built purely for defense and survival. They couldn't build outward. They were constrained by the city walls and this desperate need to stay close to the protective shadow of the castle.
Oh, so they had to build up.
Exactly. They had absolutely no choice but to build upward. We are talking about some of the earliest high-rise buildings in the entire world.
Wow.
It was this chaotic, completely vertical existence where society was just stacked on top of itself. It was incredibly densely populated, deeply unsanitary, and constantly shrouded in smoke.
Which paints a pretty grim picture, honestly. But here's where I kind of struggle with the narrative of the New Town.
Okay.
The guide notes that starting around 1767, they built this gleaming new district. They drained a massive, super polluted loch in the valley.
Which is what eventually becomes the Prince's Street Garden.
Right. And they built this neoclassical masterpiece right across the way. It's a strict, rational grid of streets. You got George Street, Thistle Street, Rose Street, Princess Street, elegant, sweeping gray sandstone facades.
It's gorgeous.
But didn't this software update just create a massive class divide? Like, did the wealthy just completely abandon the poor, leaving them behind in all that medieval squalor while they moved over to the shiny new grid?
Well, see, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that is the critical tension of this architectural shift. You are entirely correct that it facilitated a physical separation of the classes.
Yeah, it seems obvious.
Right, but in the vertical tenements of the Old Town, you historically had this bizarre sort of social integration.
Oh, really?
Yeah. A wealthy merchant or maybe a lord might live on the middle floors where the air was a bit cleaner, while the poorest citizens lived in the basements or the attics of the very same building.
Oh, wow. So they were sharing the exact same space.
They passed each other on the same narrow stairs every single day. So when the new town was built, the affluent basically drained out of the Old Town, physically relocating across the valley.
So it wasn't just like an urban planning choice. It was an ideological fracture.
Exactly. The new town was the physical manifestation of the Scottish Enlightenment. It represented a monumental psychological shift in the society.
Yeah.
They were aggressively moving away from that cramped, survival-focused medieval mindset where you're constantly worried about siege, war, and plague.
Right, the fortress mentality.
Exactly. The new architecture was designed to embrace elegance, reason, philosophy, order, the wide streets and those private gardens in the center of the squares. They were literal mechanisms to let light and air into the city.
And metaphorically, into the minds of its citizens.
Precisely. The neoclassical architecture, with its strict geometry, was this loud declaration: we are a modern, rational, enlightened society.
And yet, and this is what's so cool, they didn't bulldoze the past. That is the true genius of it.
No, they just left it right there.
Yeah, reading the source material, what strikes me is the incredible visual theater of it all. You can stand on Princes Street today, completely surrounded by this grand, rational, enlightened grid, and when you look up across the sunken gardens, boom.
There it is.
There is this dark, jagged, totally chaotic medieval castle cutting violently into the sky. It's like a historical zipper connecting two warring ideals.
And because of the sheer density of the city center, you can navigate this entire philosophical time travel experience on foot.
Which is wild.
It is. You can physically walk from a medieval close, which honestly feels like petrified tree roots plunging into the dark earth, and 10 minutes later be standing in front of a perfectly symmetrical Georgian townhouse.
But, you know, to truly grasp why that medieval old town looks the way it does, and why it is perched up there literally looking down on the Enlightenment grid, we have to look at what it was actually built on.
The foundation.
Right. And the foundation isn't just dirt, it's explosive. The geography detailed in the guide here is staggering. Edinburgh Castle sits right on top of a 340 million year old extinct volcanic plug.
Yeah.
I mean, building your royal fortress on top of ancient magma is just the ultimate strategic flex.
It is the defining feature of the city's existence. The topography of Edinburgh literally dictated its destiny. This isn't a city that just happened to be built near a nice hill, you know?
Yeah.
That massive ancient plug of volcanic basalt rock is practically impenetrable from three sides.
So you just can't attack it.
Exactly. The sheer cliffs offered an unparalleled defensive advantage. Mechanically speaking, in medieval warfare, whoever held that rock held the castle. And whoever held the castle effectively controlled the fate of Scotland.
It makes total sense. I mean, you don't need to build a massive artificial wall when the earth itself has already provided a 340 million year old stone tower for you.
Right.
And the sheer density of history just sitting on top of that rock is difficult to wrap your head around. Inside the castle, you have the Honours of Scotland in the Crown Room.
Which are the oldest crown jewels in the British Isles, by the way.
Right, and you have St. Margaret's Chapel, which is this 12th century building that actually stands as the oldest surviving structure in the entire city. And then you have the 1 o'clock gun.
Oh, the gun, yeah.
Which has been fired daily, except on Sundays since 1861. Just layer upon layer of history.
And when you look at the spatial layout of the Royal Mile cascading down from that fortress, you see this brilliant narrative written right into the landscape.
How do you mean?
Well, at the highest elevation, on the most defensible volcanic rock, you have the castle. It represents pure military might, raw survival, defense. But as you walk down the Royal Mile, literally descending the slope of that ancient crag, the societal function shifts entirely.
Right, because at the very bottom, on the flatland, you arrive at the Palace of Holyroodhouse.
Exactly.
Which is the official Scottish residence of King Charles III, and obviously have those deep historic ties to Mary Queen of Scots.
Precisely. You are physically walking a timeline from raw military power at the top to refined royal diplomacy and living quarters at the bottom.
Wow.
The geography dictates the function. You don't put the delicate palace up on the exposed rock, and you don't put the military garrison down on the vulnerable flatlands.
That is so true.
And just behind the Palace of Holyroodhouse, you have the rest of the volcanic system just looming over you in the form of Holyrood Park.
Which, I have to point out, is not a manicured city park. It is a massive 260-hectare nature reserve right in the middle of the urban center.
Yeah, it's wild.
And towering over all of it is Arthur's Seat, which is the 251-meter-high main peak of the ancient volcanic crater.
And the guide notes that it takes about 45 to 60 minutes to hike to the top. This is just an unparalleled urban mechanism. You don't have to leave the capital to conquer a mountain.
No.
The mountain is integrated right into the city.
I want you to picture the reality of this for a moment. You wake up early in your hotel room, you step out the door, and literally within an hour, you have hiked to the summit of an extinct volcano.
Yeah.
You're standing there, the wind is whipping around you, and you're watching the morning light break over the Firth of Forth. It's illuminating the jagged medieval rooftops on one side and the grand neoclassical avenues down below you on the other. It completely shatters the barrier between urban travel and wild exploration.
It really does. And that intense, dramatic geography, the dormant volcanoes, the looming shadows of the castles, the ancient rain-slick stones, it generated a very specific atmosphere. It didn't just shape military history, it acted as an incubator.
Which brings us to the wizard in the room.
Oh, here we go.
This stark, divided, shadow-filled geography shaped one of the most famous literary worlds of all time. We need to talk about J.K. Rowling and how Edinburgh wrote Harry Potter.
Yes.
And I admit, here's where it gets really interesting for me, because I'm usually incredibly skeptical of those romanticized cafe inspiration stories.
Oh, sure.
You know the narrative. An author sits in a coffee shop, stares at a castle through the window, and magically a billion-dollar franchise pops into their head. It always feels too clean.
Right?
But looking at Blanchett's research here, she wasn't just passively inspired by the vibe. She was systematically lifting the city's hidden DNA and mapping it directly onto her pages.
What's fascinating here is the actual mechanism of her creative process. When you look closely, the boundary between the real historical Edinburgh and her fictional universe just completely dissolves.
Completely.
Rowling arrived in the city in December 1993, and the circumstances are crucial. She was a single mother, struggling financially, with just 3 chapters of a manuscript in her suitcase.
And she only planned to stay through Christmas.
Exactly. But she stayed, and the physical environment of Edinburgh provided the exact architecture her story needed.
Okay, let's look at George Heriot School. It was built in 1628, and it sits just a short walk from the famous Greyfriars Kirkyard.
Yep.
The physical structure is a masterpiece of the Scottish Renaissance. It features 4 distinct towers. It has a large central courtyard, and most tellingly, the school is divided into 4 distinct houses.
Right.
Now, I know Rowling has pushed back slightly on this, saying she had the initial idea for Hogwarts before she ever saw George Heriot. But she also admitted, bizarrely, I found myself living in the shadow of something that looks very much like Hogwarts.
And when you're a writer who's deeply immersed in building a hidden ancient world, and you are physically walking past a 4-towered, 4-house, 17th century institution every single day.
It's going to bleed into the text.
That geography inevitably bleeds in, yeah. And that shadow extends directly into Greyfriars Kirkyard, a cemetery where she regularly walked her daughter.
This is the part that completely changes how you view the creative process. It is literal grave robbing, but for literature.
Pretty much.
If you wander through the twisting paths of Greyfriars, you will find the tombstone of a man named Thomas Riddle, who died in 1806. Thomas Riddle. Tom Riddle, Lord Voldemort.
It is definitely not a coincidence.
No. And it doesn't stop there. The text points out there are gravestones in that exact same yard bearing the names McGonagall, Moody, and even Robert Potter.
Yeah.
She wasn't sitting in a room pulling these iconic names out of thin air. She was literally borrowing the dead of Edinburgh to populate her world. And the result today is wild. That 19th century grave of the real Thomas Riddle is now the most visited site in the cemetery.
Oh, it's constantly covered in lipstick marks and messages left by fans.
Right.
But beyond the names, the spatial duality of Edinburgh perfectly mirrors the central conceit of the Harry Potter universe.
How so?
Well, the premise of the books relies on a hidden magical society operating just out of sight of the mundane, everyday Muggle world, right?
Yeah.
Edinburgh is structurally built for hidden worlds. Because of the extreme topography we discussed, it is a city of subterranean streets, layered closes, and steep drops. Take Victoria Street in the Old Town,
which is universally considered the primary inspiration for Diagon Alley.
Yes. It is a beautiful, steeply curving, cobbled street, and the architecture features these colorful, split-level facades that seem to physically stack on top of each other.
It's so weird to look at.
It is. There's a terrace running above the street level, independent shops spilling out onto the pavement, and a joke shop right at the bottom. When you walk down Victoria Street, you honestly feel as though you have slipped through a crack in the modern world and entered an older, more chaotic dimension.
And we have to address the mythology around where she actually wrote the books, because the economic trajectory of her time in Edinburgh is staggering.
Oh, absolutely.
You have the Elephant House Cafe, which famously claims to be the birthplace of Harry Potter, with a big sign in the window.
Right.
But the source material clarifies that in the early desperate days, she mostly wrote at a place called Nicholson's, which was actually owned by her brother-in-law.
Yeah, she needed a free place to sit.
Exactly. It was a safe harbor where she could nurse a single cup of coffee for hours while her daughter slept in a stroller, without the pressure of spending money she didn't have.
And the contrast between how she started in the city and how she finished is remarkable. She begins as a struggling single mother in her brother-in-law's cafe. And fast forward to January 11, 2007. She finished the final manuscript for the Deathly Hallows in Suite 552 of the Balmoral Hotel,
which is the absolute pinnacle of luxury in the city.
It is a sweeping, opulent suite. She even signed a marble bust in the room to permanently mark the occasion. Today, that room is named the J.K. Rowling Suite, and booking it will cost you between £2,000 and £3,000 British pounds a night.
That's insane. From nursing a single coffee to a £3,000 a night suite, it is the ultimate full circle moment.
Totally.
But here is the thing about Edinburgh. As deeply as we love the wizarding world, the actual documented history of this city contains facts that are significantly stranger, darker, and funnier than any fiction Rowling could have invented.
Oh, without a doubt.
Edinburgh has this very particular, almost blunt relationship with its own history. It doesn't put everything behind pristine glass.
That is a critical observation right there. The city prioritizes lived-in pragmatism over delicate preservation. It is full of brilliant, deeply functional eccentricities.
Okay, let's look at the Balmoral Hotel we just mentioned.
Yeah.
It has this massive, majestic clock tower that completely dominates the skyline over Princes Street. It is an iconic piece of this city's visual identity.
Yeah.
But if you look at the clock, it's wrong.
Yep.
It is deliberately set exactly 3 minutes fast.
And the mechanism behind that decision is pure, unadulterated pragmatism. The Balmoral Hotel sits directly above Waverley Station, which is the main railway hub.
Right.
So for over a century, the city has kept that towering, highly visible clock 3 minutes fast for one simple reason: to give panicked travelers a slight buffer to catch their trains.
So what does this all mean? I find that to be such profound insight into the Scottish psyche.
Yep.
A supposedly highly punctual modern European capital looks at its grandest timepiece and decides, you know what, human beings are perpetually running late. Let's alter the perception of time itself to accommodate our own flaws.
It's amazing.
It prioritizes the messy function of daily life over aesthetic accuracy. The only time the clock tells the objective truth is on December 31st for the exact New Year's countdown.
It is a triumph of function over form. And you see that exact same stubborn, independent logic applied to the city's main thoroughfare, the Royal Mile.
Oh, the measurement thing.
Right. The name itself implies a standardized unit of measurement, a mile. But it is not a standard mile.
No, because why make things easy?
Exactly.
The text details that the Royal Mile is actually 1.81 kilometers long. It is a Scots mile, which happens to be 107 yards longer than an English mile.
Just to be different.
Right. And just to inject a little more chaos into the mix, it isn't even a single continuous street. It is technically 5 entirely different streets strung together end to end. Castle Hill, Lawn Market High Street, Canongate, and Abbey Strand.
It is a beautiful refusal to conform to external standardization. And speaking of the Canongate section, that area contains a literary mistake that inadvertently changed global culture.
Oh, the Scrooge story.
Yes. We all know Ebenezer Scrooge, the legendary miser created by Charles Dickens. The genesis of that character is entirely rooted in a simple misreading of an Edinburgh tombstone.
This might be my favorite anecdote in the entire guide.
It's so good.
Dickens is visiting the Canongate Kirkyard, wandering among the graves, and he spots a tombstone for a man named Ebenezer Lennox Scroggie. Now, Scroggie was a mealman, a merchant who dealt in corn and grain. But Dickens, walking through the Scottish gloom, misread the engraving of mealman as mean man.
The mean man.
Yeah.
He was so struck by the idea of someone being remembered for eternity simply as a mean man that it sparked the creation of literature's greatest penny pincher.
A typo in a graveyard literally birthed an icon.
It's incredible.
But if you really want to understand how the city treats its towering historical figures, we have to talk about John Knox. Knox was the undisputed titan of the Protestant Reformation in Scotland.
A massive historical figure.
Huge. He was this fiery, massively influential religious figure who fundamentally altered the spiritual and political landscape of the nation before his death in 1572, and he was buried with honor in the churchyard of St. Giles Cathedral.
But decades later, the city's infrastructure needed to evolve. The space was required for civic expansion, and so that sacred churchyard was simply paved over.
I mean, today, the grave of one of the most important men in Scottish history is located in a parking lot.
Yeah.
Specifically, he is buried underneath parking spot number 23. There's just a small, humble plaque marking the location where commuters literally park their Honda Civics on top of him every single day.
It is a stunning display of iconoclasm.
It perfectly captures the friction of the city. There is a deep, profound reverence for history, but it is constantly undercut by a very dry, ruthless practicality.
Mm-hmm.
You need a parking lot.
Oh.
Well, John Knox is just going to have to deal with it.
Pretty much.
And this dry sense of humor extends right into their modern military traditions. I was reading this section on the Edinburgh Zoo, and I legitimately thought it was a typo at first.
Oh, the penguin.
Yes. The Norwegian Royal Guard has an official commanding officer stationed in Edinburgh. His name is Sir Niels Olav III, and he is a king penguin.
He is a highly decorated king penguin.
It's so funny.
Since 2008, he has held official rank, and in 2016, he was actually promoted to brigadier. When the Norwegian Royal Guard visits the city, this penguin literally waddles down the line and inspects the troops.
Wow.
And the human soldiers stand at absolute rigid attention for the bird.
It's glorious. But incredibly, Sir Niels Olav III is not the most bizarre animal to be integrated into the Scottish military apparatus.
No, he's not.
The guide details an event from 1838. The 78th Highlanders Regiment was returning to their barracks at Edinburgh Castle after a long deployment in Sri Lanka. Mm-hmm. And they decided to bring back a souvenir, a live elephant.
Which became the official regimental mascot.
But here's the mechanism of unintended consequences. You house an elephant in a confined military barracks filled with 19th century Scottish soldiers. Predictably, the elephant quickly developed a very strong, very demanding taste for beer.
Naturally.
So, for a brief, beautiful period in history, the impregnable fortress of Edinburgh Castle was simultaneously housing the ancient crown jewels of Scotland and a heavily intoxicated elephant.
It is a vivid reminder that history wasn't lived in sepia tones, It was loud, messy, and deeply weird. And the castle itself is full of these strange operational secrets.
Like what?
Well, in the Great Hall, if you look closely high above the fireplace, there is a tiny concealed window. It is known in Scots as the Laird's Lug, which translates to the Lord's Ear.
A built-in espionage system.
Exactly. It allowed the reigning monarch to secretly eavesdrop on the conversations of their guests dining in the vast hall below. They could gauge loyalty and plot strategy based on unguarded whispers.
We have spying kings, beer-drinking elephants, time-traveling clocks, and religious titans buried under parking spaces. It is an unmatched tapestry.
Truly.
But I want to pivot back to that elephant enjoying a pint, because it transitions perfectly into the revolution currently sweeping through Edinburgh's dining rooms, the Scottish Renaissance.
This is an absolutely vital component of the modern city's mechanics. For decades, the global culinary reputation of the United Kingdom was, to to put it mildly, bleak.
I mean, it was defined by boiled vegetables, heavy pies, and gray meat, let's be honest.
Right.
But reading Blanchette's analysis, it is clear that since the 1990s, Scottish cuisine has undergone a radical structural transformation. And the mechanism driving this revolution is the reliance on world-class local terroir.
Yes.
Now, I usually hear the word terroir thrown around by sommeliers talking about French wine, referring to how the soil and climate affect the grapes.
Yes.
How does that concept apply to a cold, windy Scottish port city?
Well, it applies perfectly when you consider the extreme geography we discussed earlier. Scotland has a harsh, demanding climate. Historically, this meant survival relied on harvesting whatever the immediate land and sea provided.
Right, you eat what's there.
Exactly. The terroir of Scotland encompasses the freezing, nutrient-rich waters of the North Atlantic and the rugged, heather-covered expanses of the Highlands. For a long time, chefs tried to import continental ideas to seem sophisticated.
Oh, like French cooking.
Yeah, but the revolution happened when a new generation of chefs realized they didn't need to import anything. They had some of the most sought-after natural ingredients in the world right in their backyard.
So we were talking about lochfine oysters, Atlantic salmon, langoustines pulled from the cold sea, incredible lamb raised in the Borders region, and wild game hunted in the Highlands.
Exactly. They took this hyper-local survival diet and began treating it with immense Michelin-level respect. And the geographical epicenter for this culinary explosion is a neighborhood called Leith.
Leith is a fascinating case study in urban rebirth. Until 1920, it wasn't even technically part of Edinburgh.
Right, it was its own thing.
Yeah, it was a fiercely independent, gritty port town on the coast. But over the last 2 decades, the old maritime warehouses along Leith Walk and the waterfront area known as the Shore have been completely repurposed.
The industrial architecture has basically been reclaimed by gastronomy. A prime example highlighted in the guide is the Kitchen in Leith. It is run by chef Tom Kitchen, who actually trained under global culinary legends like Alain Ducasse.
Okay.
Yeah, and when he returned to Scotland, he opened his restaurant in a converted warehouse in 2006. He won a Michelin star in less than a year. His entire operational philosophy is nature to plate.
So how does that actually work in practice?
It means an obsessive daily connection to the supply chain. He doesn't design a menu and then source the ingredients. The ingredients that arrive at the back door that morning dictate the menu.
Oh, I love that.
The way they handle local game and seafood, using French techniques to elevate Scottish ingredients without burying their natural flavors, has become the guiding light for modern cooking in the city.
But the brilliance of this renaissance is that it isn't confined to the high-end waterfront. The text highlights incredible innovation happening across the residential neighborhoods, too.
Oh, definitely.
In Marchmont, there is a restaurant called Condita. It only has 10 seats.
10 seats.
That is an insane economic model. They serve a single seasonal tasting menu of 7 to 9 courses based entirely on what is blooming or swimming in Scotland that specific day.
It is a complete surrender to the seasons. And in the Southside neighborhood, you have a place called Azel, which pushes the concept even further. They don't even hand you a menu.
Right. I read that. They just give you a printed list of the raw ingredients they managed to source from local farms and foragers that week. You read the list, and the kitchen crafts a multi-course meal around those elements.
It requires total trust between the diner and the chef.
Absolutely.
But if you want to understand the baseline of Scottish comfort food elevated to its absolute peak, the guide points to the Scran and Scally in the Stockbridge neighborhood.
Okay.
It is a gastropub, also spearheaded by Tom Kitchen. The mechanics here are about taking dishes that were historically poor man's food like fish pie or traditional haggis and applying rigorous culinary technique to them. It offers arguably the best value in the city for experiencing the essence of Scottish flavor.
And we absolutely must acknowledge Henderson's in the New Town. They have been pioneering vegetarian food since 1962.
Way ahead of their time.
Yeah. They were focusing on organic, local produce decades before the farm-to-table movement became a global marketing trend. They proved the terroir wasn't just about meat and fish. But, you cannot discuss Scottish gastronomy without discussing the liquid gold that washes it down.
Oh, the water of life.
Whiskey.
The production of whiskey is deeply intertwined with the landscape. If you want to understand the mechanics of the spirit, the Scots whiskey experience in the city is the ultimate classroom. They house a staggering private collection of over 3,500 bottles.
That is essentially a library of alcohol.
It is. And they break down the complex production methods and the distinct flavor profiles of the 5 whiskey regions of Scotland. You learn how the peat in the soil of Islay creates a smoky flavor, while the water in the Speyside region creates something much sweeter.
It's the perfect foundational knowledge before you venture out to order a drink in the wild. And consuming that whiskey in its natural habitat, the Scottish pub, is a cultural ritual you just have to experience. The guide makes a very careful distinction here, though. The traditional Scottish pub culture is fundamentally different from English pub culture.
How so?
It is generally louder, slightly less formal, and inextricably tied to live, traditional folk music. You don't just sit quietly in the corner. If you want an education in single malts, you navigate to the Bow Bar in the Old Town.
A classic.
And if you want to drink in absolute opulent Victorian splendor, surrounded by intricate stained glass and hand-painted tiles, you go to the Café Royal in the New Town. Standing at the bar, getting a pint, and listening to a live fiddle player is a non-negotiable requirement for understanding the rhythm of this city.
What becomes clear from this culinary mapping is that venturing into neighborhoods like Leith or exploring Stockbridge with its Sunday market by the river and its whole village feel is how you escape the dense, tourist-heavy, gravitational pull of the Royal Mile.
Right.
It forces you to interact with the real operational Edinburgh.
Okay, so we have excavated the volcanic geography. We've walked the philosophical grid of the Enlightenment, we've traced the literary ghosts, and we've mapped out the Michelin-starred warehouses. Now we need to translate all this theory into practical magic.
Logistics.
Exactly. How do you actually execute this trip?
Yep.
When is the optimal time to insert yourself into this city?
Timing your arrival in Edinburgh is arguably the most crucial decision you will make, because the physical and cultural mechanics of the city alter drastically depending on the season.
Let's break down the data. The guide strongly identifies spring, March through May, and autumn, September through November as the sweet spots.
Yeah, the shoulder seasons.
Right. During these windows, the crowds are manageable, allowing you to actually breathe in those narrow closes. You can secure a reservation at places like Candida without waiting 6 months, and the visual aesthetics are at their peak.
Particularly in October, when that low, golden autumn light hits the gray sandstone facades of the new town. It's stunning.
But then winter offers a much quieter, more introspective, and significantly cheaper experience, with one massive exception. December. December brings the sprawling Christmas markets and the juggernaut that is Hogmanay.
Right.
Hogmanay is the Scottish New Year, and the text describes it as one of the most intense, deeply rooted cultural events in Europe. Massive street parties, fire festivals, people swinging flaming baskets above their heads. It is ancient and wild.
This whole thing.
But then there is summer, specifically August.
Yeah, August in Edinburgh is an entirely different organism. This is when the International Festival and the Fringe simultaneously consume the city.
And the Fringe is the largest live performance arts festival on the planet. The statistics are mind-bending. The city's population basically doubles overnight.
It's crazy.
Every available square inch of space subterranean basements, historic pubs, grand halls, and street corners is converted into a stage. And because of the northern latitude, the sun stays up well past 10 p.m.
Huh?
It is a city running on pure, chaotic, creative adrenaline.
Yeah.
But I have to push back hard here, based on the practical logistics. The prices for accommodation absolutely skyrocket. The streets become so jam-packed you can barely walk down the Royal Mile. Is it actually worth fighting through that level of human congestion and paying exorbitant premium prices just to say you were there in August?
See, this raises an important question, and it comes down to a ruthless assessment of your own priorities.
Okay.
If your goal is a contemplative, atmospheric walk through the layers of history we discussed, August will be a nightmare for you. The architecture is entirely obscured by scaffolding, posters, and crowds.
Right.
However, if you want to witness the absolute concentrated global peak of human creativity, August is a non-negotiable pilgrimage. It is the most vibrant, overwhelming version of the city. You just have to accept the terms of engagement. Book your rooms 6 months in advance and embrace the chaos.
Fair enough.
But if you are seeking the quiet, authentic soul of the city, that crisp October afternoon we mentioned is unparalleled.
Regardless of what month you choose to brave the elements,
Right.
there is a structural advantage to the city that I absolutely love. The guide highlights the radical accessibility to culture. It is one of the most brilliant civic policies in the UK.
Oh, the museums.
Yes, the major museums are entirely free to enter for their permanent collections.
It completely democratizes art, history, and science. You can walk into the National Museum of Scotland, which is a breathtaking architectural hybrid merging Victorian cast iron elegance with stark modern design. And you can explore deep Scottish history, or walk right up to Dolly the sheep, the world's first cloned mammal, without buying a ticket.
You can stroll into the Scottish National Gallery just to get out of the rain and spend a quiet Tuesday afternoon standing inches away from masterpieces by Van Gogh, Rembrandt, Titian, and the great Scottish painters, and it costs you absolutely nothing.
It is an incredible public asset.
Let's run through the rapid-fire logistics of navigating the ground. The currency is the British pound, but don't panic if an ATM hands you Scottish banknotes. They look different, but are completely legal tender everywhere in the UK.
And the financial infrastructure is overwhelmingly modern. The city operates almost entirely on contactless payments now. Whether you are hopping on a bus, buying a pint, or picking up street food at a market, you just tap your card or your phone.
As for physical movement, we've established it is a highly walkable city, but a word of warning. The terrain is punishing.
Oh, your legs will burn.
It is built on a volcano and deep valleys. It is relentlessly hilly, and the historic areas are heavily cobbled. Do not bring delicate footwear. For bridging longer distances, the Lothian bus network is exceptionally efficient, and there is a sleek tram system that runs directly from the airport terminal through the city center all the way down to the sea in New Haven.
A quick note on cultural etiquette, too. Tipping in restaurants is generally expected to be around 10 to 15% if the service is good. However, if you are standing at the bar in a pub ordering drinks, you do not tip.
And we must address the meteorological reality. The guide specifically warns that Edinburgh is one of the windiest cities in the UK.
It is brutal sometimes.
Because of its position on the coast and the funneling effect of the crags and valleys, the weather is wildly unpredictable. Rain is not a season. It is a constant, lingering threat. You can experience bright sunshine, biting wind, and freezing rain, all within a 45-minute window. Always pack a raincoat.
It is also worth noting that while the city is incredibly dense, its geographical position makes it the perfect logistical anchor for exploring the wider country. You do not need the burden of a rental car while inside Edinburgh, but the rail and bus connections are superb.
The proximity to the wild is amazing. You can board a train or a coach and be deep in the spectacular, brooding glacial valleys of the Highlands, or standing on the shores of Loch Ness in just a couple of hours.
Or if you are interested in military history, Stirling, with its massive, imposing castle on the legendary Bannockburn battlefield, is only an hour away.
You can head east to the coastal town of St. Andrews, the venerable birthplace of golf and the home of Scotland's oldest university, also about an hour out. Or you can head south into the rolling atmospheric hills of the Scottish borders to explore the ruined Gothic abbeys where Sir Walter Scott drew his inspiration.
There's so much.
And if you are mapping out a broader UK itinerary, the cultural contrast of Glasgow is only a 50-minute train ride away. Even London is highly accessible via a beautiful 4.5-hour train journey that sweeps right down the eastern coastline.
Edinburgh essentially functions as the northern anchor of Great Britain, but it provides a social, architectural, and historical experience that is entirely distinct from anything you will find in England.
We have excavated a massive amount of ground today. We started by looking at a city that literally tore its own identity in half, leaving behind the chaotic, vertical survivalism of the medieval Old Town to construct the rational, enlightenment-driven grid of the neoclassical New Town.
We examine the mechanical reality of its geology, dissecting how a 340-million-year-old volcanic plug offered an impregnable defensive position that ultimately shaped the military and political fate of an entire nation.
We followed the shadow of a struggling author who lifted the dark, subterranean DNA of the city's graveyards and ancient schools to construct a global literary phenomenon. We unpacked the profound, stubborn pragmatism of a city that sets its clocks fast for commuters, paves over its religious titans for parking spaces, and enlists penguins into royal military service.
And we explored the mechanics of the Scottish culinary renaissance, understanding how a reliance on a harsh, hyper-local terroir transformed the old salt-stained warehouses of Leith into bastions of Michelin-starred innovation.
Yeah.
You know, the guide offers a beautiful synthesizing thought near its conclusion. It posits that Edinburgh is a city that scales perfectly with the time you invest in it. 3 days will expose you to the grand monuments, the castle, the Royal Mile, the grand museums. 5 days will allow you to breach the residential neighborhoods, to understand Leith and Stockbridge. But a week or more is when the city begins to yield its actual secrets, its hidden rhythms, and the quiet corners only the locals navigate.
It is a city that rewards relentless curiosity. And as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final story from Blanchette's text.
Okay.
We have spent this entire time discussing massive, towering volcanic fortresses. We have analyzed the sweeping intellectual triumphs of Enlightenment philosophers, rewriting the rules of urban planning. We have marveled at world-famous wizards and the grand maneuvers of spying kings.
We've covered a lot.
But right near the entrance of that famous Greyfriars Kirkyard, sitting quietly amidst all this towering, explosive history, is a small monument. It is widely considered the most beloved and fiercely protected statue in all of Edinburgh.
Yeah, it's very famous.
It is not a monument to a king, a bloody general, or a brilliant philosopher. It is a life-size statue of a little Skye Terrier dog named Greyfriars Bobby.
Such a great story.
When Bobby's master, a night watchman, died and was buried in that cemetery, the story goes that this small dog sat by his master's grave and guarded it through freezing winters and howling winds for 14 years until he finally passed away himself.
Amidst all the grand architecture of power, it is a monument purely to devotion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I want you to ponder this as you finalize your mental map of Edinburgh with all its clashing, jagged puzzle pieces. In a city fundamentally defined by impenetrable volcanic fortresses, explosive military history, and monumental intellectual shifts, what does it say about the true underlying heart of Edinburgh, that its most cherished, enduring monument is simply a tribute to the quiet, unyielding loyalty of a small dog in a medieval graveyard?
You've been listening to Beyond the Horizon, the podcast by Area Voyages. The full article for this episode is available at www.areavoyages.com. Remember to like, share the podcast, and leave a review to help promote our work. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything. Until next time, safe travels.